Chapter 18 of Barbara and Brittany by E. A. Gilly. Read for LibriVox.org into the public domain. Chapter 18 Aunt Anne Again. Barbara had not been so frequently at the bath-house of late, the sea proving more attractive, and she was therefore surprised one day on going there to find a new bath-boy. She missed her old plain-faced friend and wondered what had become of him. "Is he ill?" she asked at the office on her way out. The woman pursed up her lips. "No, he is not ill," she said, "but we found that he was not of the character that we had thought." "But he had been with you some years," Barbara expostulated, for the boy had confided that fact to her. "He had, but he had degenerated, we found." A dreadful doubt seized Barbara that his dismissal might be due to the help he had given her in Alice's escape, and in that case she would be partly responsible for him. "Will you kindly give me his address?" she said, turning back again to the office. The woman looked doubtful, and said she was not sure if she had it. "I think if he has been with you several years, you must surely know where he lives," Barbara persisted, and seeing her determined look, the woman apparently thought it would be the quickest way to get rid of her, and did as she was asked. Barbara repeated the name of the street and the number once or twice as she went out, and wondered how she should begin to find her way there, though consoling herself by thinking it was not the first time she had hunted up unknown addresses successfully since she had come to France. It was very hot, and for a moment she hesitated, wondering whether she would not put off her search till another time. Then she decided it was her duty to look the boy up at once. Asking a kindly postman if he could direct her to the address, she found that the house was in one of the streets near the quays. Though rather a long way off, it was not difficult to find, and once found it was not easily forgotten, for the smells were mingled and many. Barbara wandered down between the high old houses, looking at the numbers, when she could see them, and finally found the one she sought. She had not long to wait after knocking, and the door was opened by the bath-boy himself, who stared at her in astonishment. "Ma'm'selle?" he said doubtfully, as if uncertain whether she were a messenger of ill omen or not. "I have come to call," Barbara explained. "May I please come in?" His face broadened into the familiar grin, and he shuffled down the passage before her, wearing the same heelless list slippers that had first attracted Barbara's attention to him in the bath-house. The room he took her into smelt fresh and clean, and indeed was half full of clean clothes of all descriptions. "My mother is blanchisseuse," the boy said, lifting a heap of pinafores from a chair. "I am desolated that she is out." "Yes. Guillaume, will you please tell me why you were sent away from the bath-house?" Guillaume looked uncomfortable, and moved his foot in and out of his slipper. "Why, ma'm'selle, I was dismissed. They said it was my character, but that is quite good. I do not drink, nor lie, nor steal. My mother was always a good bringer-up." "Then was it because of helping the English lady to escape? Was it that, Guillaume?" The boy swung his slipper dexterously to and fro on his bare toes. "It was doubtless that, ma'm'selle, for it was after the visit of the lady she belonged to that I was dismissed. My mother warned me at the time. It is unwise, she said, for such as you to play thus. But the English lady looked so sad." "I am sorry, Guillaume. I do wish it had not happened." "So do we, ma'm'selle," said the boy simply, "for my mother, who is blanchisseuse, has lost some customers since then, too, and I cannot get anything here. To-morrow I must go to St. Malo or Paramé to try, but they are much further away. Yet we must have money to keep the little Hélène. She is so beautiful and so tender." "Who is Hélène?" inquired Barbara, and at the question the boy's face glowed with pride and pleasure. "I will bring her to you, ma'm'selle. She is now in the garden. She is with me while I am at home." She shuffled off, and returned in a few minutes with a little girl in his arms, so pretty a child that Barbara marvelled at the contrast between them. "She is not like me, hein?" he asked, laughing. "Hélène, greet the lady," and Barbara held out both hands to the little girl, who after a long stare ran across to her. In amusing her and being herself amused, Barbara forgot the reason of her visit, and only remembered it when the little girl asked her brother suddenly if he would fetch her a roll that evening. The boy looked uncomfortable. "Not to-night," he hastened to say, "but the mamma, she will bring you something to-night for supper. I used to bring her a white roll on my way home from the baths," he explained to Barbara. "May I give her one to-night?" the girl asked quickly, putting her hand into her pocket. "I would like to." But the boy shook his head. "No, no, the mamma would not like it. The first time you were in the house. Some other time, if ma'm'selle does us the honour to come again." "Of course I will. I want to see how you get on at St. Malo or Paramé," she asked, "and whether Hélène's doll gets better from the measles." "Or whether she grows wings," put in Hélène in waving her hand farewell. Barbara was very thoughtful on her way back, and before reaching the house she had determined to give up her riding for the present. One more excursion she would have, in which to say good bye to Monsieur Pirenne, who had been very kind to her, but it seemed rather selfish to use up any more of the liberal fund which her aunt had supplied her with for that purpose. After all, it was hard that the Bath boy, through her fault, could not even supply his little sister with rolls for her supper. Mademoiselle Thérèse was somewhat surprised at the sudden decision, and perhaps a little annoyed by it, for she had grown accustomed to the trips to Dinard, and would miss them greatly. Monsieur Pirenne was also disturbed, because he feared Mademoiselle had grown tired of his manège. Barbara assured him to the contrary, and tried to satisfy them both with explanations which were as satisfactory as such could be made when they are not the real ones. As to connecting the girl's visits to the ex-Bath boy, which Mademoiselle Thérèse thought were due merely to a passing whim, and the cessation of rides, she never dreamed of such a thing. The result of the boy's inquiries at St. Malo and Paramé were fruitless at first, and Barbara had paid several visits, and was beginning to feel almost as anxious as the mother and son themselves before the boy succeeded in his search. But one afternoon when she arrived she found him beaming with happiness, having found at least a temporary job at Paramé, and one which probably would become permanent. "That news," she said, shaking the boy's hand warmly in congratulation, "will send me home quite light-hearted." But somehow, though she was honestly glad, it did not make her feel as happy as it should have done, and she thought the road back had never seemed so long, nor the sun so hot. She would gladly have missed her evening lesson and supper, but she feared that of the two evils Mademoiselle Thérèse's questions would probably be the worse. Indeed, when in the best of health, that lady's conversation was apt to be wearisome, but when one felt, as Barbara had for the past few days, that bed was the only satisfactory place, and that even harder than it used to be, then Mademoiselle's chatter became a penance not easily borne. "You are getting tired of us, and beginning to want home," the Frenchwoman said in rather offended tones 2 days later, when Barbara declined to go with her to Dole. "I am sorry we have not been able to amuse you sufficiently well." "Oh, that isn't it at all," Barbara assured her. "It is just that I have never known such hot weather before, and it makes me disinclined for things." "You are looking whitish, but that is because you have been staying in the house too much lately. Dole would do you good and cheer you up." "Another time," the girl pleaded. "I think I won't go to-day." And the lady left her with a shrug, and the remark that she would not go either. She was evidently annoyed, and Barbara wondered what she should do to atone for it, but later in the day she had a visit that drove the thoughts of Dole from both her mind and Mademoiselle's. She was sitting in her room trying to read, and wondering why she could not understand the paragraph, though she had read it 3 or 4 times, when Mademoiselle Thérèse came running in excitedly to say that there were 2 American gentlemen downstairs in the salon to see her, one old, one young. Mr. Morton was the name on the card. "Why, it must be the American Pretender!" cried Barbara, who, seeing her companion's look of surprise, added hastily, "The elder one used to know my Aunt Anne, and they have both been in Paris. It was the younger one who helped Alice Meynell there." "Then indeed I must descend and inquire after her," said Mademoiselle joyfully. "I will just run and make my toilette again. In the meanwhile, do you go down and entertain them till I come." But Barbara was already out of the room, for she thought she would like to have a few minutes' conversation before Mademoiselle Thérèse came in, as there might not be much opportunity afterwards. "How nice of you to call on me," she said as she entered the salon. "I was just longing for one of the English-speaking race." The elder Mr. Morton was tall and thin, with something in his carriage that suggested a military upbringing, his hair and eyes grey, the latter very like his nephew's, grown sad. "The place does not suit you?" the elder man inquired, looking at her face. "Oh, yes, I think so. It is just very hot at present." "Like the day you tried to ride to Dole," the nephew remarked, wondering if it were only the ride that had given her so much more colour the first time he had seen her, and the sea breeze that had reddened her cheeks the last time. But there were so many things the girl was anxious to hear about, that she did not allow the conversation to lapse to herself or the weather again before Mademoiselle Thérèse, arrayed in her best, made her appearance. She at once seized upon the younger man, and began to pour out questions about Alice. "You need not fear any bad results," Mr. Morton said to Barbara. "My nephew is very discreet." And Barbara, hearing scraps of the conversation, thought he was not only discreet but lawyer-like in his replies. The visit was not a very long one, Mr. Morton declining an invitation to supper that evening, with promises to come some other time. But before they went,